where I am. Don't know about you, but nonetheless, I'm sure things will heat up as the evening goes on. We've got a great guest returning to the show, and he'll be joining me very, very shortly. Before we get to that, just the usual reminder that I want to thank you, whichever channel you're watching this one on. I can see we're on 101 different YouTube channels. That we're on X, we're on Getter, we're in Rumble, Facebook, even at Facebook, which is so old-fashioned. Oh God, Facebook. Anyway, we're on all those platforms, and wherever you are, I hope you'll enjoy the chat as we go through stuff. Now, as is always the way, I mean, there's a particular topic I want to talk tonight about, and that's Tommy Robinson and his release from captivity. I want to talk about that. But of course, in the meantime, other things happen, and I'm sure you've seen the events in Ukraine, Russia over the last 24 hours, which are deeply worrying. Hello, Chris Davis. Good to see you, and good to see everyone. I see the different things over on YouTube. So lots of issues there regarding what exactly is going on, with peace talks today. But yesterday we have the Ukrainian drone attack on Russian aircraft which deliver nuclear missiles. Yeah. That wasn't great. And this is actually, I might start with this one. Sir Keir Starmer, let's face it, he's our absolute hero. So Sir Keir was sort of toughening it up. He was cosplaying as being a soldier, which I'm sure our guest will appreciate. At one point I saw a picture from anyway, dressed in fatigues as if he's going into battle. And he was announcing all this investment in the military of the UK. And I have to say, number one, I wasn't convinced. And number two, I was worried. In fact, actually, what we'll do is, I think we'll start off talking about this because it's kind of relevant, I think, to the broader topic. So look, he's sitting there very patiently, quietly in the background as I waffle. But now his moment has come. So look, everyone, please welcome my good friend, Richard Inman, back to the show. Hi, Richard.
Hi, David. It's been a long time. How are you?
Do you know, Richard, one of the things about doing this is that time goes so fast. It's incredible. 1 minute you're chatting to people and it's all great, and then blank because you're doing other stuff. And weeks, it's been a while since we've been spoken to each other.
Yeah, I think the last time just before the 1st of February event, wasn't it?
The event in London, yeah,
because we had the thing in the can I say where it was? We had the event in central London with Ben and Kate and Arlene, and that was great, David. I mean, that was just a fantastic event, and we got the video. It took a bit of time, but we got the video, and it came out really well. It came out absolutely fantastically. So yeah, that was great. And I'll say one thing, David. You put on a really good event, and you're a very, very good host as well. So I think it was superb. Really enjoyed it.
I think the thing about events and everything else, the role of the host is just to make everyone comfortable, so they just relax, and then everything runs perfectly, And as we actually were saying before we came on air, it's very true. Those of us not on the mainstream media, we can be honest, Richard. We everything has to come out from the heart and the soul, and you can do that when you're not all the time restricted and controlled, I might say, by mainstream media rules, which are absolutely loathsome, in my opinion.
Dreadful. I mean, can you imagine if we were doing this with a teleprompter, David? It would be an absolute train wreck. Do you know what I mean? It would be,
yeah, it wouldn't work.
I'd be up there with my glasses saying, "What?"
Yeah, well, I'd be as bad. yeah.
Wouldn't work.
Tell me this. What did you think, just before we get into the main topic? Richard, this whole Keir Starmer, I'm going to tool up the British Armed Forces because we've got to get them on, I think, a war footing. And, I tell you what bothers me when he talks about that. I don't know what war he's wanting to fight, but part of me thinks, I wonder, is it against people like us he wants to go to war? What do you think?
Well, I mean, Keir Starmer, to me, is a traitor. So, we can't trust anything he says or anything he does. He's an authoritarian. He's a communist. He's a globalist. He said he's got more time for Davos than he has for the British Parliament.
Yeah.
And let's get it right. When he's talking about gearing up for war, he's not talking up gearing up for war to protect the north of England from Scotland, or those bands of marauding Welshmen that might come streaming across the border from Wales at any time. No. He's talking about defending the love of his life. And I'm not talking about the rent boys that have tried to burn his house down. We're talking about the love of his life, the European Union. That's what he's talking about defending, because this is a subplot to get us into that integrated defense network that is going to become the European army. And it's all part of undermining Brexit. It's all part of the globalist agenda. But I think they've got a massive problem. And it's Orange Man in the United States. It's Donald and all the people around Donald Trump. JD Vance. So it's going to be very interesting. I mean, obviously what's happening between Russia and Ukraine, I still don't understand what that war's about. I mean, I don't understand why Putin did it, and I don't understand why the West goaded Putin into doing it. The whole thing, to me, is a complete mystery. So, but I think the British military's been so run down and so let down. And you know, the other thing is, David, we blame Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer's rotten, but then again, so was Boris. So was Rishi. Where's Rishi Sunak now? Where is he? This was our minister. Boris did more to damage the UK than even Keir Starmer's done with the migration. There was millions coming in every year under Boris. So Boris got Brexit, but Boris thought Brexit was a license to actually bring more people in the country that are going to destroy the culture, destroy our religious heritage and liberty, and he thought that was what getting Brexit done meant. So, and we could go right back to Cameron and Osborne and Brown and Blair. So we've had, to me, pretty much 40 years of treason. From John Major onwards, we've had treason.
Yeah, I mean, my argument is, Richard, that basically Thatcher was the last British Prime Minister. It's just, and ever since then, it's been a slow burial. Can I just say to Victoria Todd, she says, JD Vance is one of my favorite human beings. Listen, Victoria, anybody with the name Vance is always going to get my vote, always. I even claim lineage with him. So yeah, he's good. And actually, you're right, Richard. You know something? If Donald Trump hadn't have got in, then number one, Donald Trump would be in prison because they'd have put him behind bars. And number two, I mean, can you imagine?
I think we'd be in prison as well, David.
Very likely. Yeah. Well, that actually nicely said. Good segue there, Richard. Good segue. Because I mean, again, going back in time a little bit to last summer, we had a fantastic rally that Tommy Robinson and those around him, like yourself, put on in Trafalgar Square. I was delighted to be there. It was one of the best days I've ever had out, Richard. I was, in Northern Ireland, we have a particular thing called 12th of July, which is a sort of a celebration of Britishness. But what happened in London last summer, in July, it was like Union flags, Scottish flags, Welsh flags, Northern Ireland flags, brilliant patriots all from all around the world, brought together fundamentally by one man, and that was Tommy Robinson. That was July. He was then put in prison within about a month or so of that, wasn't it? It was pretty shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
And so Keir Starmer comes into power beginning of July. Two months later, Tommy Robinson is behind bars. And, I mean, I found at the time, it was so sickening. And obviously you were, very clearly involved in what was happening. How did you feel about it at the time?
Well, I mean, there's so much happened. I mean, people forget, if we look at the timeline, it really started in St. George's Day. We did a very, wasn't that small, we did a decent size event, St. George's Day 2024. Danny Tomo and me basically organized it, and we kind of cobbled it together with pieces of string, and fair play. I mean, Danny pulled it out the bag because he did a few bits and pieces that it just wouldn't have happened if he hadn't have, basically did what he did. But so that was great, and that started a bit of buzz, because the reason we started doing the events in the way that we did when we did the thing in October 23, when there was all these horrendous hate marches going through the city, and there was talk of a hate march going on Armistice Day. So we put a call out, and there was no real organization. It was just get to London and get on the streets. And we had probably 10 to 15,000 men, and I mean proper men, on the streets at the Cenotaph. And of course, the media went into frenzy. Suella Braverman lost her job over the head of it. There was a little bit of argy-bargy, but we looked at that and we said, you know what? We're not going to do it like that anymore.
Yeah.
We're going to do properly, professionally organized events where we will be talking to the police from the very beginning. We will put a plan in place. We'll have proper stewarding, proper security. And that's what we set up. And I mean, you know, we have had, so we had St. George's Day. There was a bit of ag on St. George's Day, but that was nothing to do with us. And then we had 1st of June, absolutely fantastic event. We had, I think it was the 27th of July, the Trafalgar Square. That was the best one. I mean,
that was the best one, yeah.
That was absolutely, the weather was perfect. We had I mean, do you know who led that? It was a Northern Irish piper, one of the best pipers in Northern Ireland. I called Mark. I'm not going to say his surname just in case he's a bit bashful. But a piper from Northern Ireland, from East Belfast. He led the march, and you know, so there was the 12th of July connection there with that, you know. And, but then, so everything's good. So okay, we've got Starmer in office, which again, you know, we could talk about that, and you know, the reform. The reform vote probably led to the Starmer massive majority. That's another thing that we could talk about. But we got Starmer in, and everything changed, because the day after the event on the 27th of July, Tommy's leaving the country in a car, gets to Folkestone, I think it was, and he gets arrested for terrorism.
Yeah.
I mean, terrorism. I mean, look, David, we live in Northern Ireland, right? We know what a terrorist looks like, talks like, and does, right? We've kind of seen it all, right? In the past 40 years. Tommy is not a terrorist, right? So he's arrested for terrorism. So straight away, I kind of got on the phone. We got this little group with, you know, Lawrence and Carl Benjamin and goodness knows who else in it, you know, Calvin Robinson and all the other people, Paul Thorpe. And I said, guys, we need to do a demo now. And everyone's like, oh, we can't do, you know, we don't, so we want to do a demo. We don't any. No, I says, we need to do a demo today, and we need to do it at Downing Street, because he's in there. What we need to do is put a marker out to the police. We're not going to give them any warning. We're just going to put a call out, and we're going to get as many people there as we can. And we had probably, within 2 hours of putting the call out, I think we had about 300 people standing outside Downing Street. Perfectly, it was perfectly marshaled. There was basically no security there, but we managed to keep control of it. The police came up to me and they said, Richard, you know, how long is this going to stay? How long are you going to stay here for? I said, well, how long are you going to hold Tommy for? And they went, what? Well, we're going to stay here until you release Tommy. You know, so that was on the 27th. So, but what happened? I mean, it took a sinister turn. And people were even saying to me, Richard, if you go to the airport, they're going to arrest you. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll go to Downing Street. If they're going to arrest me anywhere, they can arrest me outside Keir Starmer's house rather than at the airport. So we'd done all that. Tommy got released. Tommy jumped in the car, went to Spain, and you know, obviously he was getting his head together for what he knew was coming. Because once he'd shown that film, he kind of knew it wasn't going to end well, right? So then, of course, Southport happens, and I was sitting in the airport. I was flying back to Northern Ireland, and I'm sitting there, and I'm going, "What is this? Like a dance class with little kids? What, like, you know, what's actually happened?" And then when the true horror of it came out, and you know, people were quite justifiably putting their anger onto the keyboard and saying, you know, how disgusted we were with everything. There was people in Northern Ireland. I mean, people talk about Lucy Connolly, and quite rightly so. People in Northern Ireland got arrested for exactly the same things, but you know the difference was, Dave, and this is where it comes down to having good lawyers and having people that have, let me say this, that are not quite as naive as a young mum with 2 kids who's never been in trouble with the police before. So anyone that got arrested in Northern Ireland went not guilty straight away. They said not guilty. We didn't. Nothing we said was wrong. We're going not guilty. And I think if a lot of those people had pleaded not guilty, we wouldn't have ended up with Peter Lynch in prison. Lucy and Wayne and all the others that have had their lives literally destroyed because they put stuff on social media. And again, when you look at Lucy Connolly's statement, what she said in that tweet, I don't believe she was inciting anything. No. I believe it's a massive miscarriage of justice. It's a disgusting way to treat her. I was actually sitting talking to my wife earlier on. I said, you know what? You could have put that on Twitter that day, or I could have put it on Twitter. I mean, my wife's not on social media, but if she had been, because we were all so angry about what happened to those little children, and there was no compassion from the Labour government. And then now Ben Habib said this several times. So Ben doesn't normally get his things wrong, and Ben said the prosecution of Tommy was pushed for by the Attorney General. Jerry Adams' friend. You know the one that's
Lord Hermer.
Good pals with the godfather of terrorism. We can kind of say that, even though he's won his case down south.
He was never in the IRA.
He's never in the IRA. It's funny though. Do you know what's really weird? When he was standing on a platform in Belfast, mid 2000s probably, and somebody shouted about the IRA, what did Jerry say? They haven't gone away, I
wonder how you knew that. Funny.
Yeah, I mean, but sure. Must have just been a guess. For him to be able to say that, do you think maybe there's a connection there?
But back online. So Lord Hermer, the same guy, was who chose just recently there not to recommend any leniency to Lucy Connolly. He was involved back then, wasn't he? He was pushing.
He was pushing for the prosecution. And again, I'm not a legal expert, so if I'm wrong about this, and again, we've got to be careful about ongoing court cases, but you'd wonder how many other cases against our friend is Jerry Adams' friend pushing for. And to me, the whole judiciary is completely corrupt now. I wouldn't be confident of getting a fair trial anywhere in the United Kingdom. If me or you went before the judge, I would be saying, it's going to be a question of march the guilty prisoner in. I mean,
But the other thing is, you also, Richard, you're spot on that if you plead guilty, which is exactly what those people, many of them did last August, September, then you're bound to rights, because even now, for example, where I defended Lucy Connolly at the time, still defend her, but people can turn around and say, well, it's all very well for you to say that, but she pleaded guilty, so what are you crying about? And it's hard, but it's the point you make as well, Richard. If you're just a mum of 3 and you're not involved with the police and the legal side of things, you maybe make injudicious calls.
This is the chilling nature of it, though, David, because what it means is the vulnerable people are the ones that are thrown to the wolves.
Yeah,
we keep talking about Peter Lynch. Peter Lynch, died in prison at his own hand, allegedly. I mean, who knows? But he died. We know he died in prison. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting that that these things have happened to people, and they're just normal people. They're not criminals. They're not, and the thing is, and yet the grooming gang mafia is still operating throughout the United Kingdom with impunity. And I was doing a live stream earlier on, and when we made those films, and again, I'm very careful about saying the titles of the films, but when we made the films about the grooming gangs in Telford, the information that we had on people across the whole of the West Midlands, I mean, some very, very high profile people in the Pakistani community, lawyers, right? There's one very, very prominent lawyer. I'm not going to name him, but he's if I said his name, you'd know him. He's very prominent. He likes to get his face out there. He was right in the middle of all of it. We just didn't have the evidence that we needed to stick a camera under his nose. But believe you me, there's a lot of people walking around And again, this is one of the other reasons that Tommy's getting targeted, because Tommy is the only one who's had the guts to name and shame people on camera. And the interesting thing about those films that we made, David, in early 2020, between 2020 and 2022, I was involved in it. And basically, when we made those films, not one of the people who had a camera stuffed under their nose tried to sue Tommy, tried to sue anyone that was involved in making the films. So, and you know how litigious people are, especially when it comes to Tommy. They would get money. They would get money at the drop of a hat if he said anything that wasn't true. So the only conclusion that viewers of those films can come to is what we were showing was true, and it was true because we've got the evidence to prove it was true. You know.
Yeah.
So getting back to Tommy, I mean, so Tommy's locked up, right? And again, this is the government. This is, every time, every decision that was made by the government. It wasn't independent of the government. It was the government that was driving the whole thing.
Yep.
He's in Belmarsh. Yep. He's in Belmarsh. He's getting settled in Belmarsh. He's got somewhere that he's going to be safe. He's going to have good facilities. He's going to be able to pretty much do his own thing and see. He should never have been in Belmarsh, incidentally.
No,
he should have been in a Category D prison. He should have been in an open prison. He should have been going home 1 or 2 days a week, and then come sort of November, he should have been out on a tag, right?
Yeah.
That's or maybe it's at the latest January, right? So but instead of that, they sent it to Belmarsh, the most high security prison in the country. But
which is where they put Axel Rudakabuna, the Southport killer.
Yep. And of course, and Axel is, as far as I know, Axel has assaulted a prison officer.
He's been in there.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
So and Tommy told me himself, straight out Tommy's mouth to me, he is a Muslim. He's going to the mosque. And somebody else told me that was can I say yes, that was working inside the prison, right? So now, again, I'm not saying that's true, but that's what I've been told by 2 independent witnesses. So, again, draw your own conclusions. So, but the government, the deep state, knowing that Tommy was deeply psychologically damaged by his incarceration in 2018, and when he came out of prison, he was a different person. I knew him before he went in. I knew him when he came out, and he needed a lot of support. And with all the problems that comes with that. So they knew that putting him in solitary confinement for 7 months could be extremely damaging to him. Yeah. But do you know what he's alluded to? And he hasn't said it overtly, but he's alluded to, and he said this to Ricky Dool, and he said 80% of the people that were writing to him in prison were Christians. And he's alluding to the fact that the prayers of those Christian people helped him get through. I'm not saying Tommy's a believer. I don't discuss what Tommy believes and his private faith. That's between him and God. I'm not going to get into that. There's been a lot of speculation, and that's not my business, right? But what he did acknowledge was that basically he massively appreciated the prayers of God's people, and that 80% of the people that were writing to him were Christian people, which I thought was a very interesting situation.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what we've got now. So we know that, they'd been teasing about when he might get out, when he mightn't get out. And then it all suddenly happened Monday of last week. And we've got a short clip I want to play you, Richard, if we can just cue it up. And this is Tommy just when he's got out, and he makes a very short excerpt from what he said. But it's the beardy Tommy we're going to play. So we can just play this one, Jed, that would be great. And here's it coming up.
Fortunately, I think, 167 million people saw the truth. So that gagging order, these attempts at censorship, to silence, to cancel people, it hasn't worked. You've attempted to lock up the truth, and that truth has been echoed around the entire globe. It couldn't have been any more successful. I knew exactly what I was doing when I released that film. I knew I'd end up in there, and I also knew they'd give them every opportunity to pull every trick they wanted to, from messing with visits to messing with phone calls to messing with food. I knew that. But I made the decision to release that film because the British public deserved to see the truth. For too long, since the start of my activism in 2009, police raids, court cases, I actually thought when I walked out of here this time, it would be the first time since 2009 that I haven't been awaiting trial or prison. And bang, I'm awaiting trial and prison on multiple cases again now. But I've watched from the start of my activism. First of all, I saw Geert Wilders. Geert Wilders was targeted with hate speech laws and prosecutions. I've looked in America. This is the playbook that's played out across the entire globe. If we look in America, look what they've done to Steve Bannon. Look what they've done to Alex Jones, £1 billion. Donald Trump would face the rest of his life in prison if he did not win that election. Look now recently with Marie Le Pen. They've stopped their standing. Look at Katie Hopkins in our country. They took her home. They took her family home. Lawfare has been waged against anyone who has challenged the globalist narratives, challenged open border, challenged mass immigration, even challenged vaccines, any of it. They come at you from every angle.
He's absolutely right, Richard, isn't he? I mean, I agree with every word Tommy just said.
I think that speech, considering what he'd just been through and considering the psychological effect it had on him in 2018, 2019, that was his period, wasn't it? In fact, yeah, it would have been 2000 because he got out and then they put him back in, if you remember. So you think about what happened to him and the way he came out last time and the way he came out there. And he just came out like it's like a boxer that's got knocked down in the first round. Yeah. And they just get straight back up and they just keep fighting for another 12 rounds until they win. And it's like a political Rocky movie, you know what I mean? It's like that song by Chumbawamba. He gets knocked down, but he gets back up again.
That's it. Yeah.
So you know, he's extremely resilient. And the interesting thing about this, and I said this to him, I said the interesting thing about those two speeches, because he did, and he did another one with that guy with the blonde hair. I'm not sure of his name, but very seems like a very decent fella. So he did Ezra, and he did a speech outside outside the prison, and then he did another. I didn't hear him swear in any of those those speeches. And believe you me, Tommy can swear like a drunken sailor, like we all can. You know what I mean? So you know, I thought he seemed a lot calmer, a lot more measured, a lot more statesman-like, and I would like to see more of that sort of Tommy, you know, than the angry, you know, sort of bish bash bosh, you know, kind of thing. Because I think if he goes down that road, he's going to get a lot more traction with a lot more people, and he will really start winning big. And that's, you know, at the end of the day, this is all about saving the country. And Tommy is a massive. I think Tommy's the most important political figure in the United Kingdom, bar none. I think.
Well, you see, I actually, Richard, would agree with that because he's the most targeted, and you can always tell who the establishment fears the most because that's the person who gets the most fire. And yes, I know Nigel Farage gets hurty words, but he also gets a lot of favorable press media. Tommy Robinson doesn't get that.
Nope.
And I see that actually in my way. That's an endorsement that Tommy's legit. And he's actually the real thing. And this is the other thing, Richard, I think that they fear him. I mean, he was a political prisoner, to my mind. There's no doubt about that. Lord Hermer could have given other advice, as you rightly observed. Didn't have to put him away for all these months, but they wanted to, didn't they? They wanted to damage Tommy.
And I think what we've got to be very vigilant about, and I've been talking to people across here in Northern Ireland, because obviously you can only work in your own little sort of sphere of influence. Not that I have much influence in Northern Ireland, but you know, I'm involved with people who've been doing demos for the past 2 years in Bangor outside one of these migrant hotels. And I said, guys, it says if Tommy is remanded on the 5th of June, which is this Thursday, if he's remanded on Thursday, we have got to take to the streets peacefully and legitimately. We've got our Free Tommy banners. We've got to take the streets, and we've got to, you know, really make some noise. Not doing anything illegal, not doing anything that's wrong, but make a lot of noise and make sure we get noticed. And I would say that to anyone up and down the country. Now, I stress, I'm not calling for people to do anything illegal or improper. But if Tommy is remanded on the 5th of June, I think there needs to be a mass outpouring of peaceful, legitimate protest around the country. Maybe, and do you know what would be a really good thing, actually? As crazy as this sounds, David, candlelit vigils, midnight candlelit vigils at Downing Street, things like that, stuff that people never normally do. Because if he's remanded, so think of the cruelty of that. They've let him out for a week.
Yeah,
right?
I agree. Yeah, it's like
so
torture.
we've got to be ready to mobilize at a moment's notice. And again, if you're in London, if you're in England, get to Westminster Magistrates Court at night. I don't know what time it's going to be. I was going to say 9 o'clock. I don't know what time it's going to be. Westminster Magistrates Court this Thursday. Whatever time it's meant to be, I'm sure you can find it on the Urban Scoop or on Tommy's website or Tommy's Twitter. Get there and stand with Tommy. Like we're in Northern Ireland, it's almost impossible for us to get off of that short nose. But get there and stand with. If you're in Great Britain, if you're in England, Scotland, or Wales, get to that court case on Thursday.
Do you think it's actually a possibility that he could be remanded, Richard?
Absolutely. With this government, absolutely, because. And this is why people have got to be very careful what they say. There's all these people saying he should go to America. No, Tommy will work within the legal system. He's not going to run away. He's not a flight risk. So, but what I could see the deep state doing is saying, oh, he's a flight risk. He might leg it. So we're going to try and remand it. Nothing would surprise me with them. But I think what we've got to put out there is if that happens, then the police up and down the country are going to have to police lots of peaceful, legitimate, legal demonstrations. And it's going to cost the police and the government an absolute fortune. Because if people turn out in every town and city up and down the country, week after week after week, protesting about Tommy Robinson being remanded in custody, then maybe they'll think twice about it. This is a true story, David, right? This really happened. So in 2019, September, it was back end of 2019. It was about August 2019. We did a mass demonstration for Tommy. He was in prison. We did a free Tommy demo outside the BBC. And when it finished, I mean, we all, it's like that. We all go to the pub. We went to the pub. But what I didn't realize was a whole lot of people hadn't gone to the pub and they decided to go for a walk down through London. And it all got a little bit boisterous. And, they were hanging off the railings at Downing Street and they were getting on top of buses on Westminster Bridge. And actually, we went to Facebook as well. We did a little bit of a stunt at Facebook. But anyway, it was a very, very boisterous sort of day. And it wasn't orchestrated. It just happened spontaneously. And the police got in touch with me and they said, they called me in from the headquarters in south of the river. I can't remember what they call it. It's not Scotland Yard, but it's the one south of the river. It's near Waterloo Station. And the police liaison guy gets in touch with me because obviously I've been liaising with him. And the police have been a real pain in the arse, to be honest with you, over the whole thing. They said, "Oh, my boss wants to see you about how we can prevent this happening again." I says, "What happening again?" I said, all the trouble. I said, "Okay." So I jumped on a plane, came across, and met with this. I think he was an assistant chief constable or something. And he started off really cocky and he was kind of trying to intimidate me. And anyway, it was a backwards and forwards, and I just wasn't having any of it because I thought, I don't care what rank you are. Like, I'm a taxpayer. I'm paying your wages, mate. So don't be. I'm not a criminal. Don't treat me like I'm a criminal. I'm not one of your officers. So show a bit of respect. It went backwards and forwards, and at the end of it, he got kind of so desperate. He says, "Richard, what can we do to stop this happening again?" I says, "It's very, very simple." I says, "I'm sure you'll be talking to people in the Home Office. I'm sure you'll be talking to people in the administration." I says, "It's very simple. You stop sending Tommy to prison. And that's how you solve the problem. If you stop sending Tommy to prison, there won't be people running around London causing trouble because they'll have no reason to." I said, "So feed that back into your, to the organ grinders, right?" And until the whatchamacallit, the silenced prison sentence, he hadn't been in prison. He hadn't been in prison since 2018. So obviously the new administration didn't get the memo, and everyone's been, has behaved impeccably. But I think the only thing that will actually wake the establishment up is if there's thousands of people taking to the streets in peaceful, legitimate demonstrations up and down the country. And if that happens, I don't think that would be a bad thing, David, to be honest with you.
I mean, I think for me, the thing is, as you said, and it's like Tommy himself said in that little clip we played, it is the lawfare, because it's not just these charges that he's facing on June the 5th, I think, but also there is the terrorist charges, which are still sitting in abeyance. So they've basically, it's like aircraft lining up in a runway, one after the other. So if they can't get him in that, will they try? I mean,
Yes.
And I see, thing is, I don't even think that they might get him on it. It's the psychological warfare. And Tommy's been proven himself to be so strong, but everyone's got a breaking point, and like he's just out, seeing his family, his kids, and all of that.
Yep.
And now they're dangling this. Well, actually,
Exactly.
we might. That's like, it's very much like state torture. It's certainly state persecution.
This is communists at work, isn't it? And the thing about it is, David, it's not just this administration. Previous governments have done exactly the same thing. They've,
Yep.
It happened. Exactly the same thing happened with, I think it was Theresa May was the prime minister. Yeah, it was Theresa May. So he was imprisoned under Theresa May's regime. Boris came in, Rishi came in, and they seem to kind of leave him alone. But I think here's the thing about the terrorist thing. If he gets a terrorist conviction, that is going to make it extremely difficult for him to get to the United States of America.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
But it's not impossible, because it'll be up to Trump. And I think the reality is, or the State Department, people in the State Department, but at the end of the day, it'll be the administration that have the final say. But that's why I think they'll push for that. And they might even get a conviction and then just say, oh, well, we're not going to send him to prison. It's like a suspended sentence or whatever, because a suspended sentence is hanging over you so they can grab you for anything else they want to grab you for.
But would you agree that you mentioned the States and the prospect of Tommy Robinson somehow going to the States, meeting people, whether it's an Elon Musk or whether it's someone in the State Department or whatever? Like, I think that's something that Keir Starmer would fear, because they can't control the US regime.
Yep.
They can control the rotten British media. Can't control us, mind you, but they can't control Trump and his team. So I reckon they're dead scared of Tommy connecting in the States.
Oh, absolutely. But the thing is, he's already connected in the States, because he's got a lot. Look, we know that he's got a friendship with Steve Bannon. We know, obviously not in the States. We know he's got a friendship with Jordan Peterson. There's other people that he's talking. General Flynn. So all these people know Tommy and like Tommy, right? And these are not minor actors. Steve Bannon is, Tommy was talking about the thing. I says that, there's two guys I would love to meet, and it's Steve Bannon and General Mike Flynn. Both of those
Mike
guys.
Flynn's great. Yeah, I'm very proud that he follows me on social media.
Oh, does he?
I'm very proud of that.
Absolutely, because listen, he is an operator. I mean, he's been at the sharp end. He was head of special forces. He was head of the Defense Intelligence Agency. He was the one that exposed the how should we say it? The cozying up of certain elements in the American intelligence community and what turned into ISIS. Right. So he exposed that on the Mehdi Hassan show. On I think it was on Al Jazeera or Press TV. So he's been at the forefront of all this sort of stuff for a long time, and is a highly decorated soldier. Steve Bannon, exactly the same, very successful businessman, incredible strategist. So those people are already friends of Tommy. So so Starmer should be worried, and the reality is, I think he should be even more worried if anything ever happens to Tommy. If anything unfortunate happens to Tommy in prison, I think, then that would be I think these guys in America have got that much influence that they would bring that to bear in whatever way they can on the presidency. I think the British government's in big trouble, David, because of their attack on freedom of speech, because the Americans don't like it. They don't like it at all.
No, they don't. And actually, Richard, funny enough, we've seen, even in the past couple of days, in a slightly different twist on this, we've seen people sent from the States to Ireland to have a bit of an investigation into free speech in Ireland, which is all but gone. And so, just as they're aware of what's happening in the Irish Republic and free speech, they're certainly aware of what's happening in the UK and free speech as well. Despite Keir Starmer sitting in the Oval Office and swearing that, free speech, it's something that we've always protected. I mean, the hypocrisy of Starmer he's just the worst. I have to say, I see no redeeming qualities of the man at all.
He's dreadful. He's a dreadful individual. He's got shark's eyes. He's got no emotion. He's got no empathy. I mean, the way he spoke about people who were incensed with the violence that he was trying to cover up. He was trying to cover up who Ruda Bakana was. He was trying to cover up.
Yep.
I mean, the fact that the man had an Al-Qaeda manual, and the fact that we've been... There's a bit of a clue there, isn't there? And the fact that the man allegedly is now worshipping in a mosque in Belmarsh, but it was nothing to do with the religion of peace, nothing to do with that whatsoever. It was absolutely nothing to do with that. And if we said that it was anything to do with that, my goodness, we'd be hung, drawn, and quartered for daring to utter that. And the other thing is, David, as well. I mean, today we had a landmark case. Now, the guy that was convicted today and fined in London was, he didn't go to prison. He didn't get a severe sentence. But what they've done is that they've set a precedent there, and the precedent was, if I can't remember exactly what I did a video on it earlier, but he was basically charged with religiously aggravated hate crime for burning a Quran outside the Turkish consulate. He was found guilty. He was fined £240. The Free Speech Union and the National Secular Society paid his fees. But they've now set a precedent. Even before Commissaire Keir brings in his Islamophobia laws, even before that, a precedent's been set that if you burn a Quran in this country, you're going to go before the judge and you're going to be fined at least. But I'm sure if it was someone a bit more suitable, in other words, me or you, David, if we'd done it, we'd be seeing the inside of a prison, And can you imagine if you went to prison for burning a Quran, what would happen to you in that prison? You wouldn't come out alive.
But see, this is the thing that, again, I think Tommy has helped reveal. And I saw Robert Jenrick talking about this today as well. And it's the fact that most people have no idea that inside many of our prisons, especially in England, Richard, particularly there, I mean, there are strong, focused, concentrated Muslim gangs that basically run the prison. Yeah, it's a dirty little secret that no one can talk about, but Tommy's experienced it, obviously, and so have others. And Robert Jenrick saying, we need to arm the prison guards.
Well, can you imagine that? I mean, that's all well and good saying that. You are. I mean, if you're going to arm prison guards inside the prison, and these nutcases overpower a prison guard, now that you've got Islamic nutcases, jihadists with guns on the wing. I mean, did they not see what happened in that prison in Afghanistan in 2001 when the SAS, were calling in airstrikes on the prisoners because they broke into an armory? I think people that have no idea the danger that our nation is in from radical Islamists, the Muslim Brotherhood, Jamaat-e-Islami, these radical groups. And of course, we're not saying that Muslim Brotherhood are all terrorists or Jamaat-e-Islami, but they are extremists, and they're classed as extremist groups and parties. And people just don't realize how dangerous everything is in the UK. And that's why anything to do with that demographic is being wrapped in cotton wool, and they're having bubble wrap put around it just to make sure they don't break out. Because if you look what happened, the other thing that happened in August last year, David, that people have forgotten about, is that the Muslim Defense League was putting thousands of armed men on the streets day after day. Birmingham, Middlesbrough, I think Bradford. I could be wrong about that, but certainly a lot of those big cities where there was communal violence, they were putting serious, and they were organized, and they had intent. And it's only by the grace of God that someone wasn't killed in the follow-up rioting on, So I think we're living in a very tense time. And I think what Tommy's done with the Unite the Kingdom movement, and not just Tommy, everyone that's involved in it, is we've managed to bring people together from all communities. We've had every single event, we've had Muslims at those events. We've had people from all different racial backgrounds.
Oh, yeah, I can confirm that. Yeah.
So what the state are afraid of is us actually managing to unite people, and people come together and say, actually, hold on a minute. We've got a lot in common here. and we're all getting put upon by the state. You know, we should actually be joining hands here and standing against those rats that have destroyed our country with yeah.
Well, see, well, that brings me then to one of the curiosities, and that is that we do have so much in common. You're absolutely right. You know, having these little petty divisions seems stupid to me because there's a big battle to be fought, metaphorically. And, and then when you get to someone like, and I'll just say his name, Nigel Farage, and you say the word Tommy Robinson, it's like a crucifix to the vampire. Oh, he said Tommy Robinson, well, he's not really my sort. You know what I mean? And I find that just so annoying. Now, I know some people will say the case for the defense is, look, he has to attract the vote. And yes, some people do like Tommy, but a lot of people don't like Tommy as well. So Nigel's trying to play the footsie game with the electorate as a whole. How do you rate it, Richard?
He's a coward. He's a coward. I saw the way he reacted when it was all kicking off last August, September. Straight away, he when he realised he might have overstepped the mark in some things he said, which he didn't, because what he said was basically true. You know, there's a few things he got wrong, but what he said, I'm going to talk about Nigel now. What Nigel said was basically true. And, but the heat was coming upon him, and straight away he turned his guns on Tommy. Straight away, and then of course his one of his flying monkeys, Richard Tice. You know, we just done that. I think that was the 27th event.
Oh yeah,
you know, he's been interviewed by that other flying monkey. What's her name? Camilla Tominley, and Camilla Tominley says, "What about Tommy Robinson?" And he says, "We don't have anything to do with Tommy Robinson or that lot." That lot probably put him into Parliament, if we're just going to be brutally honest. They think they can win this without us, right? And without our help. Well, they're not going to. And it's going to be very interesting, David, to see what Ben does with this party. You know, he's gone very quiet, but if I know Ben will be beaver away in the background. He'll be working in the background, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens there, because there needs to be a challenge on the right, on the sensible right. I'm not talking about all the headbangers, and we're not even naming the silly little parties that are on the far right, but on the sensible right, there needs to be a challenge to reform, because reform, to me, David, they are, and I said this, and I apologize before I said it. I apologized earlier before I said it, but I can't think of any other phrase. To me, they're all fur coat and no knickers. It's as simple as that. There's nothing underneath. There's no substance to them. They do not have what it takes to govern this country. What we need is something a lot deeper, a lot more thoughtful, and a lot more intelligent than reform. Don't get me wrong. They do great depth. They do great events. They have great conferences. They've got all the razzmatazz. They've got all the PR. They get people like Ant Middleton and professional boxers and all that sort of stuff. Look, no disrespect to Ant Middleton or the professional boxer. I think Ant Middleton's a great guy. But what we need are serious people that can actually go into the Home Office, gut it, get rid of all the wrong uns, similar to what Trump's trying to do in America. And look at the pushback. Trump spent 4 years putting together a team of superstars. You know, Marco Rubio, JD Vance, Elon Musk. I mean, they're just, you know, the woman that's in head of is it Homeland Defense, Tulsi Gabbard. You know,
RFK Jr. All of
RFK Jr. And these are very bipartisan people. These aren't, you know, but what Farage seems to have is just his little gang, right? And he's been very exclusive, so he's not broadening it. And to me, he might win the election, but that could be a really bad thing for the right in the UK, because if he hasn't got what it takes, and this is where we need to keep the pressure on reform, and we need to keep pushing them to the right and pushing them to do what's right.
Yeah. I agree with. See, I agree with that. Yeah. I think the facts of the matter are, at this point in time, reform is the only show in town. At this point in time, other things could emerge, and as you say, and when they do. But the most important thing of all is to keep pressure on, and this is where I think, you know, the constituency that Tommy Robinson speaks for, it is a very important constituency. You know, those kind of, if you like, working class, hard working British patriots of different ethnicities, by the way, but they're so important, and I think that the fact that Tommy makes that connection, it disheartens me that others don't reach out to Tommy. I want to see Ben, Rupert, whoever it is coming along, I want to make sure that they reach out to Tommy. They shouldn't be afraid, because Donald Trump made brave decisions. And we need to see brave decisions in this country, because I think, quite honestly, 2029 is probably our last chance to get it right.
It is. Absolutely.
And
that's why I look, I have nothing personal against Farage at all. I don't know him. I know nothing about him, but I've just watched him for years, and I've seen what he's done, and I've seen the way he's operated, and I don't trust him. And so I think the reality is he needs to be constantly. I mean, this is why we did the pledge as well. Incidentally, David, the pledge is all about this.
Yep.
The whole idea behind the pledge, as you know, is to bring people into so that we have an ideological basis for our movement. That's what the pledge is all about. And I've always said the pledge sits above the political parties. You sign the pledge, and I deduped the database the other day, and we've and I haven't even looked at it for about 3 or 4 weeks because I've been really busy. But we had about 54,000 after all the duplication had gone. 54,000 genuine email addresses of people where we know where they live. So in other words, constituencies by constituency. And that might not sound like a lot out of 60, 70 million or whatever it is. But if you're in if those people are in a marginal seat where the margin for victory or defeat is 10 or 20 votes, and we can deploy 100 votes there, we can actually be kingmakers in those areas. And
yeah, absolutely. You look at that most recent one where Reform won by 6 votes. But they do say that Nigel Farage was so panicked by the thinness of the margin that that's why he started to make moves left and right. I mean, he's moved to the left of Labour on some things, and he's moved to the right of the Conservatives and other things. And that's desperately trying to triangulate to win votes. But it certainly panicked Starmer. I mean, Keir Starmer Nigel Farage lives rent free in his head. I think we all see that.
Which is great. And fair play. And look, at the end of the day, you can't knock Farage for what he's done with Reform. They're doing very well in the polls. But I honestly think, you could go to the zoo, get an orangutan out the zoo, put a pale blue rosette on it, and it will get elected, because people are that hungry for change. So the problem is, Dave, the problem is, all of us that are in this bubble, we're talking about it before we came on air, all of us that are in this bubble, we eat and breathe this stuff, right? So we know all the personalities, we know who's good, who's bad, we know the moves that have been made. But your average guy in the street, and this isn't patronizing, that isn't mega engaged, that goes out and votes, he doesn't have the headspace. If he's worrying about paying his mortgage, and he's worrying about getting his kids to school, and he's worrying about paying for a holiday, and the price of everything's going up, he doesn't have the bandwidth to do a deep dive like we're doing, because this is what we do, this is what we live and breathe. But most people don't. So that's why Reform could well get a really good result in the election. But my concern is, what then? Okay, you've won the election. What happens next? And we can't have a situation where Nigel goes, "Oh, the civil service can't do anything." That's what the Tories have said for every election since 2010. Oh, we've got the Lib Dems to deal with. We can't do what we want to do. Oh, the civil service is a problem. Farage needs to go in there with a chainsaw and a pair of pliers and start pulling people out of that civil service, firing them, getting rid of the lefties, getting rid of the Islamists, and having a completely clean sweep, so that you've got a civil service that's fit for purpose. But that is a 10-year project, and so he can't waste his first term.
No, you're right. And I mean, my producer Jed always makes a point that you've alluded to, and that is that whilst we are very mega engaged on this, as you say, Richard, it's kind of it's in the DNA. It's everyday stuff. As he points out to me, the average Joe goes out, they do a hard day's work, they come home, they flop down and have a tea, sit in front of the box for an hour or two, go to their bed. That's it. They're not engaging in the ways that we do, and that's just the way of the world, So
it is.
You love to think that everybody was engaged. A lot I presume some of them wouldn't even know who Tommy Robinson is.
Or they just think they'll think he's evil,
or his
you know,
dog.
because
Oh yeah, that's that EFL Stephen Yaxley Lennon, as I think it's been revealed he is by the BBC.
Oh yeah. It's, Tommy Robinson, also known as real name Stephen Yaxley. I mean, come on. I mean, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing, isn't it?
They are embarrassing. And by the way, talking about embarrassing, did you see that Piers Morgan had with Tommy, had a bit of a go about Tommy, you know, come on to my show if you've got the proverbial to do.
I mean, the problem is with Piers Morgan, you know, Tommy would have to, I mean, Tommy would wipe the floor with him, right? But I don't trust Piers Morgan not to try and pull something really snide on him and do something really dirty. So my advice to Tommy is, you don't need to go on the Piers Morgan show. You fought him once in 2017. You wiped the floor with him. Piers Morgan had to change his boxer shorts after Tommy waved a certain book above his head, saying this book is cursed. And Piers Morgan never recovered from that, to be
exactly.
I believe the producer that was on that show ended up on GB News, and that's why Tommy's never allowed on GB News, because the same producer now has got a senior position in GB News. That's what I heard. I don't know if it's true or not, but that was
Well, that's another thing I have in common with Tommy then, because I'm not allowed in GB News anyway. And I just couldn't care less. The thing that the mainstream media don't get is us lot combined have massive reach.
Huge,
more than they do, more than TV News,
and it's getting bigger. It's getting bigger all the time. I've gone up. I'm, on Twitter. I'm not about 20,000 on Twitter. I've got nearly 45,000 on one YouTube channel, pushing 5,000 on another YouTube channel. So just between my little reach, and then I've got allegedly I've got some accounts on Facebook, but I couldn't comment about that. So between all the stuff I've probably got about 100,000 reach. You're probably more than that, David. And what are you on? You've got that on Twitter, haven't you? I mean,
I've got just over 260,000 on Twitter, on X alone. You know,
incredible, incredible.
But that's because I think people do come to these platforms, to find out what's happening. You know, you saw it actually last Monday when that thing happened, an incident that incident in Liverpool happened. People were coming to these platforms, Richard. They weren't going to the BBC to find out what was happening. You know,
exactly.
And that's emblematic of all that's happening. We are Tommy says it dead right. We are the media now.
We are.
Which brings us then, because we're the media now, one of the first things Tommy said when he came out was that there's going to be an event happening on September the 13th.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, I mean, look. Yeah, I mean, the planning's underway. You know, the route that hopefully we'll get. I'm not going to say what it is, but it's going to be absolutely iconic for the march. The event itself, some of the biggest names in the world on the center right of politics, whatever they want to call as the dissidents or the what do they call as the deplorables. I think that's what Hillary called us. But
she called us that back, and she regretted it. Yeah,
she did. Yeah. She lost the election by causing us. Of course, Keir Starmer just calls us far right. But there's going to be some from the States, from Europe. I'm not going to say the names. I'm privy to the names. I'm not going to say, but there is some absolute rock stars coming to speak at that event. And if you've never been to an event before, right, and you're never going to go to one again, make sure you go to that one, because that event is going to be it's going to be out of this world. So I mean, and if you want to get warmed up for that event, go on Thursday. Go on Thursday to the court, and because we need a lot of people there. And the other thing that we need is the football lads are having a march on the 28th of June in London, and it's about grooming. So it's football lads against grooming gangs. That's Russell Square, 12 o'clock. People really should go to that. And then we're having one in Belfast on the same day at City Hall again. So that's the two girls, Orla and Lindsay, who've been absolutely smashing it, standing there with Irish flags and British flags. And it completely smashes the loyalist nationalist narrative that you can't have people standing together, because
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
there's been pushback against it. There's been pushback against it. Believe you me,
I'm
David.
sure there is.
Yeah.
Conquer and divide, as
That's what
throughout history. It's
Yep.
what they use. It's what they use.
Yep.
You know, the red team and the blue team. And
Exactly.
No, I don't. We don't play that game.
We don't play that game. Yeah.
And you know, it's so true, Richard. Of the point of the thing you say, like when you go to some of those rallies that I've been to myself in London, it is perfectly obvious. There's an absolute plethora of people. There's Christian people, there's Hindu people, there's people from all faiths. Do you know this thing is not the way the media want to present it at all, you know. And I think actually the thing that struck me about the January or the February one that we were at was there was a strong Christian representation there as well, which I found really, really, really good. It was brilliant, in fact.
I mean, well, that's what I mean. I want to touch on that, David, because I think that's vital for us making progress. Because, and look, at the end of the day, this is not an attack on Hindus, Jews, Muslims, or any other religion. Everybody is welcome to come to those events. Atheists, you know, what Jedis, you know, Zoroastrians, Scientologists, whatever you are, just come, right? Just come, because the reality is that's not what it's about. But I think what the Christian presence is important, because what it does, David, it acknowledges the absolute vital role that, in fact, it's the key role that Christianity has in forming the culture of all of these islands, right? So. You know, the Republic of Ireland is pretty much apostate at the minute because they've gone down the road of communism rather than Catholicism. But you know, in the DNA of the Irish people, it is Catholicism. In Northern Ireland, it's Presbyterian, you know, Reformed Protestantism. In England, it's Methodism and the Church of England. So the DNA of our culture is Christian. And Tom Holland's book Dominion lays it on thick about how the whole of Western civilization, he doesn't just talk about England and Ireland, he probably doesn't even talk about Ireland, but he talks about Western civilization in general, is formed and birthed out of Christianity. And even Islam came out of Christianity, and communism, you know, came out of Christianity. So everything was formed and informed by the Christian faith. And getting back to that, I think, is vital in getting back to some sort of moral equilibrium where people are doing the right thing because it's the Christian thing to do, not because it feels good, but because it's the Christian thing to do, if that makes sense.
Because you see, I think we're also morally chiseled out. We're being hollowed out morally as well as politically. It's all across the spectrum, the whole piece. But the moral bit is important, you know. Massive. And I was so pleased when I went to that thing, and I've become friends now with several of the guys that were speaking who, you know, like Brett and so on.
Brett's great. Brett's great.
Yeah, he's coming on really well. Yeah,
really great.
It's brilliant to see, and we need bedrocks like that as well. You know, so it's not that we're sort of, like, I'm sort of saying that other faiths don't have a role to play, because that's all fine. But this country of ours is a Christian country. No apologies given for that. I thought it was interesting when Tommy came out of prison, he had a cross around his neck. Did you see that?
Absolutely. I mean, that was very interesting, and it was a statement. Everything Tommy did when he came out of that prison gate was a statement. The hair, the cross. I mean, there was something of you know, people talk about Charlton Heston and the Ten Commandments, right? You know, and if you see the two pictures next to each other, or I'll not make the Forrest Gump connection again, but there was the bit where Forrest was running. But no, there was something of the Old Testament prophet. Or John the Baptist about Tommy when he came out of there.
Until he got the haircut and he got the shave, and then he was recognizably Tommy again.
He should have kept the beard. He should have kept the beard. You know, it was kind of, and there was a bit of a hunger striker about him as well. There was a bit of that going Irish look. You know what I mean? He was a bit.
It was ginger beard though, wasn't it?
Yeah, this is the whole thing.
Another minority.
It's the Irish DNA in him.
It's another much underestimated minority, the gingers, who we don't want to offend. I can't, because I'm married to one.
And right? my grandson's a ginger ninja as well, so we got to be.
I'm very pro ginger, but yeah. Tommy looked great coming out after all that.
I thought it was magnificent.
All of that. He's been so. I've followed all the stuff since he's been knocking it out of the park. in the last week, you know. And have you spoken with him yourself directly?
Yes, I've spoken. Do you know what I mean? I've been obviously because I'm talking to him about what he's got planned and so on and so forth, and he's been extremely supportive because I've been through a tough time. I'm not going to cry about it, but there's been a lot of stuff going on in my life, and he was extremely supportive. And the thing about Tommy is the side to Tommy that people don't see is that he is extremely loyal to his friends, right? And there's when you're in groups like we're in, there's always a bit of backbiting between people sort of lower down the pecking order, so but Tommy never takes sides. He deals with everybody completely as an equal. He's top. People don't realize Tommy has incredible leadership qualities. They don't realize that about him, and he's very good at managing people and getting the best out of people, what he needs to get out of them, and because I've done stuff with Tommy for years and there's times so I'm never going to do anything with Tommy again. I'm done with it all. I'm walking away from the movement, and then he'd phone you up and send you a voice as you go, and the wife will look at me. She says, "You're doing something with him again?" I go, "Yeah."
Yeah.
That's just the way. That's just the way. That's just the way he is. But listen. If you knew Tommy, you can't help but love Tommy. He is a genuinely nice guy. He can be a handful, like we all can at times, but he is one of the nicest people you'll meet, and he always has time for his friends. So
I certainly agree with all of that, Richard. I think Tommy's heart is always in the right place.
Yeah.
And the victims of the grooming gangs and all of these things that he's spoken up for long before any other people came along to make it their party place. So I have huge respect for him like that. But I also would just want to say, Richard, that I don't think it's probably understood that if you've been pretty influential as well in organizing and making stuff happen, and I know myself trying to make things happen is hard, and it's often a thankless task because you're the guy in the background. People don't see all the stuff that goes on. But I think, I'm sure everyone in the stream will realize the work and effort that you've put in yourself, liaising with the police and all of that stuff that goes on. Without which it wouldn't work, Richard. Let's be honest.
No, it wouldn't. I mean, you need that, and it has to be done. And the thing is, I don't see any of it as a chore, though, David. I mean, it takes a lot of time, and it does take a bit of effort, but it's not a chore because if we have every single event we've done so far has been extremely successful, extremely peaceful, a great vibe, a great atmosphere. Now that's and I've always said this. I do my little bit of what I do, but it's a little bit. There's lots of other people doing little bits. So it's the overall team effort is what makes it work. And there's other people doing a lot of stuff. So but it is when you get to the end of an event and it's been peaceful, because the truth of the matter is that these things could go very badly wrong very easily and very quickly. We had a situation at the last event, and I will talk about this because it's kind of important. And one of the lead police officers in the event, 5 minutes before we set off outside Waterloo Station, told one of his inspectors that he wanted to start arresting people on the side of the road. Right? These were lads that were just football lads. They'd done nothing wrong. They were standing on the side of the road, and he instructed one of his officers to start arresting them. So I went over and I said, "Look," I says, "if that happens, there'll be a riot." I says, "and there's cameras all around you, pointing at you, and you'll be the one that'll get the blame." Now, if I hadn't have intervened like that, he would have started arresting people and there would have been disorder. I'm not saying how major it would have been, but there would have certainly been disorder. And that would have been the money shot that Sky News and the BBC wanted.
We're looking for.
So you've got to ask a question. Why did he do that? Why did he do that? And again, I've made representations that we actually don't want this man on the next event. So hopefully, that we'll probably get him, but I mean, but even if we do get him, he's going to have to be extremely careful what he does because we'll have cameras on and we'll be watching and we're making sure that he doesn't do anything that's going to provoke the crowd. Because we're not going there for a row. We're not going there for trouble. We're going there to have a nice, peaceful, happy event. And that's how narrow the margins are. And we've had lots of other stuff that's happened where we've managed to intervene and keep everything peaceful and keep everything in order. And, you know, we've had other instances where the police have done things that have been extremely provocative, like marching someone at the back of Trafalgar Square with a Palestinian flag. Could have caused absolute mayhem. But again, we managed to keep a lid on it and keep it calm. So, you know, so they're the things that people don't see because, and you know, but I think people have got to know that we're doing everything within our power to make sure that they have a good day, a good event.
Yeah,
and you know, we haven't dropped the ball so far. We haven't.
No, I was going to say your track record's impeccable in that. Just before we wrap up, just want to bring a few things up on screen. First of all, the pledge, which you mentioned, the pledge there. I wonder, Jed, do we have a link that we could bring up to the pledge to just show people?
It's the pledge.org.uk. The pledge.org.uk. That's it. Perfect, Jed. Well,
there you go, folks. So, you know, if you haven't already signed up to this, because it's non-party political, it's essentially just a way where people can, as you say, sign their desire to want to save our country, our nation. So sign the pledge, folks. There it is. You can see that. That's the first thing I wanted to bring up. Also, I wanted to bring up, Tommy obviously faces these court cases. Yes, the pledge.org.uk. There it is, the link below. Tommy's facing all this stuff. And I think Elon Musk perhaps made some contribution to the first case, but he's got these other cases to fund. So if you would like to support Tommy, you can make a contribution. Go over to, I think this is over in Urban Scoop, isn't it? Yeah, Urban Scoop. And you can support there. You can pledge support for Tommy Robinson because one thing that I think we appreciate, Richard, is you know, the legal costs are prohibitively high. It's very hard.
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous, and it's done that way deliberately. I mean, so that
it's lawfare, exactly.
It's lawfare, and absolutely. So again, that would be good. If you can support Tommy there. Meanwhile, if you can find Richard over, he's on multiple channels like myself, but you can get Richard on his X, which we stuck up the link to earlier, and on his YouTube and whatnot. There you go, Richard. You can see his
I want to push the new YouTube channel because I finally managed to get monetized on YouTube. I don't know how long I'll last, but we'll see how it goes before they give me a punitive punishment.
And what's it called, Richard? The new YouTube
Counter Media. And I'm going to start pushing that in quite a big way. And I've got a website, countermedia.co.uk as well. But the main thing I want at the minute, not worry about the website. I want people on the YouTube channel subscribing to that channel. I think we're on about 4,500 as it stands at the minute. So it would be great to get that up to 100,000, you know, because that would, you know, because the more people subscribe and share it, the more this message goes out and the more we have a chance of winning. And it's the same with your channels, David. So it's Counter Media is the channel on YouTube, and you'll know it when you see it. There's you know, it's all obviously all my videos.
I think we're in the background rapidly trying to establish it. So before we bring it up, hopefully we will find it. Counter Media. Yeah. Is that all one word?
Yeah, in fact, if he types Counter Media UK into YouTube, he should be able to find it. Okay,
is this it here?
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Perfect. That's
there you go.
Yeah.
So look again, if you're over on the YouTubes, make sure you're signed up to Counter Media, and that way you get all Richard's stuff there. It's fantastic to see all this work coming out, Richard. I see it from so very many people now on our side, and it's so encouraging for me because you can sort of see we're so big now they can't really stop us. I know they want to, but they can't.
It's about having as many voices, and that's why, you know, if you subscribe to Tusi, if you subscribe to Paul Thorpe, if you subscribe to Sargon, subscribe to us as well, because at the end of the day, the more of us that have big, massive followings, the more money YouTube are going to make, but also the more difficult it is for them to cancel everybody. So I think Tusi's on 868,000. He's nearly on 1 million.
He's got a massive YouTube presence.
Tommy's got 1 million on Twitter. You know,
yes.
Paul Thorpe's pushing 300,000. Jeff Taylor's pushing, I think, 250 or 300,000 on YouTube. You've got a couple of 100,000 on. So between us, I mean, obviously there's quite a lot of duplication, obviously, on that. But between us, we've probably got a reach of 5 million, which is just absolutely phenomenal. And yeah.
So it is all good stuff. And as I say, this kind of free speech festival that I know you're involved in pulling together, I mean, I think that'll be a really good thing. And I just hope that the state will not persecute Tommy and in any regard stop him from being able to get to it.
Well, here's the thing, David. I think we've done two events without Tommy being there, right? The event will go ahead, and it will be, and if obviously, hopefully they're not putting him on prison on Thursday. But if they do, the event will go ahead, and we'll make sure that we have those big names and
regardless,
rock stars coming, because there'd be actually more. If Tommy's in prison, there'd be more reason for them to come. So it would, so no matter what happens, everything's going to go ahead, and they're not going to stop us. But the key, I think, David, is, and that's why the pledge is so important. The key is pulling this all together into a cohesive political force like MAGA. We do need our own MAGA. We need to have this force. And as much as Reform are doing well in the polls, they are not the only answer. We need the UKIPs, we need the Ben Habibs, we need the SDP, we need the decent people in the Tory party, if there are any, if we can find any, and we need to pull all that together, and we need business leaders, and
I think that. I think you're right. You need the spec. You need the decent people. There's decent people everywhere.
Like,
I mean, even I think Jenrick isn't too bad in the Tories. He's okay. I know it's a leadership campaign he's running. I understand that, but you get. I mean, I can find good in most people. There is good in most, and there's bad in most people as well. Yeah. But either which way, I think that I was just delighted when Tommy got out. It was a really good day. It was strange because they let Tommy out in the morning, and then that thing happened in Liverpool in the evening. I do wonder about that, Richard, a wee bit, but I'll not go into that.
A lot of unanswered questions about that, exactly, and
a lot of unanswered questions.
A lot of unanswered questions, and again, will it ever come? Will it ever fully come out? And we know from stuff that happened in Northern Ireland, David, that we look back and we go, well, what was that really all about? And,
exactly. We could do a whole show on that, Richard.
And we maybe should actually at some point.
We maybe should. The actual history. Yeah.
I mean, because and it's actually very relevant. People might think, well, Northern Ireland, it's history, it's not important now. Well, they're using exactly the same playbook that they used in Northern Ireland on people in the UK.
Yeah, because the playbook is always the same.
Divide and conquer.
As I've grown older, that's the one thing you can see. The playbook is always the same. But listen, we're doing our best to expose it. We're doing our best to get information out there. You're doing a brilliant job, Richard. Thank you so much for all that you do. I'm definitely looking forward to September. And if people can be on Thursday to show support for Tommy outside the court, then please do that. I'm sure Tommy will have the details up on his over on his platforms as well, so you can get information there. I want to thank everybody for the zillion comments. I'm sorry it's impossible to talk.